Welcome to Marvel and Mysteries. My name is Tracy, and I'm excited about today because we are on part 5 in the Spiritual Senses series. And so today we are talking about the spiritual sense of sight. And as you know, since we've been in this series, we have the capacity to see and to experience the spirit realm that is all around us. And that's the purpose of this series, is to discover that if you don't already know that, because we are growing into the fullness of who the Lord is. And natural man does not have the capacity to understand what God is doing. Natural man does not. You have to have the Spirit of God to understand what he's doing. Otherwise, you'll just see everything he does as foolishness. And 1 Corinthians 6:17 says that the one who is joined to the Lord is one spirit with him. You're united to the Lord. You're one spirit with him. You have constant communion with the Lord. And we're made in his image and likeness, and we're growing into the fullness of who he is so that we can function just like he does. And when I first saw in the spirit, I was just a toddler, and there was a bizarre set of circumstances, and I felt like I broke it. Like I felt like seeing in the spirit was almost my new thing, and I broke it. But the Lord functioned with me in a way that I learned in other ways to hear his voice and to obey him and follow him. And this was before I had any real relationship with him to really know who he is or what he was doing. So he trained me all those years. And then later on, it was that ability to see actually started to be restored. And so ever since then, I've been growing in that. So I'm not at the end of this race by any stretch, but I wasn't born again 5 minutes ago anyway. So hopefully that qualifies me a little bit. But when I was transferred out of the kingdom of darkness, the actual dominion, the domain of darkness, when I was transferred out of that into the kingdom of his wonderful son, Jesus, that's when the scales came off my eyes. I was filled with the Spirit. I went through some good old-fashioned deliverance, and my eyes opened back up. And I also was seeing with the eyes of my heart, which is kind of like that inner discernment and perception that you have. You do see differently when you are seeing the things of the kingdom. This is not third eye that you're seeing through. This is seeing through the eyes of the Lord, seeing through the eyes of your heart as being joined one spirit to him. So when that happened to me, I was shocked at the things that were happening around me in the spirit realm that I did not see before, because you can't see it really. You might get little bits and pieces of it, but again, you won't understand what's going on. You just might see something and go, "Oh my gosh, did I see a ghost, or what was that?" But you won't have anything to stick the noodle to, so to speak. And so that's where the Lord comes in. And when this first happened with me, this is just a little warning or heads up for all of you. When you first start seeing things have a tendency to be really wild and seem a little wacky right out of the gate, but it will fuel your fire because you realize, oh my goodness, this stuff is real. And my first encounter, one of the first encounters anyway, after my eyes were opened, and it was actually pretty creepy, was cleaning out my house, spiritually cleaning out my house. A lot of times we just, in our ignoramus, have no idea of what we're really bringing into our house and our home. It's supposed to be our sanctuary, but we putrefy it with things that we should not have. And something that I had from a while back was a cassette tape of a psychic reading that I once had. And when the Lord led me to that cassette tape, I took it outside and I burned it. And when I burned it, it screamed. Now, I'm not talking about when you burn things and the combustion makes noises. No, it stinking screamed multiple voices. It was insane. So I realized, oh my gosh, again, this stuff is real. It is not fake. It is not made up. And that I better know what in the world I'm doing with it, because again, it is a serious thing. It is a serious thing. So for a lot of us, it isn't seeing is believing. But believing is seeing. But then for a lot of you, it might not be believing is seeing. It's seeing is believing. And so what in the world do I mean by that? Well, everyone can see spiritual things to some extent. It kind of depends on your background, your culture, maybe even what denomination, if you were in a Christian church to begin with, or if you weren't, if you were in the occult, etc., and things like that. There are just a bunch of different factors. But for those that are culturally spiritual, and you came out of a background where that is a very normal thing to be spiritual and all of that, then likely for you, seeing is believing because you saw the spirits walking around every day of your life growing up. It was no big whoop to you. You just understand what it is and you go about your life. Then for a lot of other folks, say the ones that grew up in North America, you've been conditioned away from the things of the spirit world, and you most definitely have been conditioned away from things about the Spirit of God in favor of logic, Greek thinking. And if there was any spirituality to it, then you have been kind of force-fed from a trough that looks like really beautiful, but it's actually demonic stuff in disguise. And that's done for a reason, because Satan is the one, he can transform himself into an angel of light. So his minions will show up and they will look wonderful and they'll look some kind of beautiful angel thing, and it's not. So we kind of have these two different schools of people that either for them seeing is believing because they're already seeing it, and the other ones believing is seeing because you only see these things if you have the Lord. And let's talk about that for a second. The Lord had said to Nicodemus, now this is the high-ranking Pharisee, this is from John 3, Jesus told him that he can't see the kingdom of God if he's not born again. And then he goes on further to say, in order to enter the kingdom of God, you have to be born of water and the Spirit. Again, it all connects back that when you are joined one spirit with him, then you can see and know what he's doing. Because natural man, again, has no capacity to understand the things of God. You'll chalk it up to foolishness and you won't treasure it for what it really is. So he was letting Nicodemus know, like, if you want to have an understanding, and remember, in all of your getting, get wisdom. And though it costs you all you have, get understanding. So Jesus is sitting with Nicodemus and he's explaining to him, look, you don't get it. You can't enter the kingdom of God unless you're born of water and of the Spirit. So you must be born again. So let's talk a bit about seeing and how it functions, because some of you, this might be the first time that you've heard it. For others, this is something that you've been flowing in your whole life and it won't be any big deal to you, but you'll get something new out of it. Even it doesn't matter if somebody is very experienced or they're inexperienced, because there's generally something that is shared that everyone can get something out of, because you might see something from a different perspective than you haven't before. So we want to talk about the way this functions. And again, I just want to say, seeing in the Spirit is not for funsies. This isn't for funsies. The spirit realm is a real realm. It is not a playground. At least you shouldn't treat it like one, but a lot of people do. There are a lot of folks that they're talking about the things they see in the spirit, but they don't necessarily have the revelation of why they saw it or what they need to do with it. And that is something that we can all learn, is to make sure that we're asking the Lord, okay, I saw this. Now, what do I do with it? Is this something that I just pray into? Do I need to have a conversation with the individual? Am I praying about it with them or not? And the Lord will guide you and lead you in all of that, so that you don't accidentally release information that could be something that there's a sin or something that somebody's dealing with. So you're not trying to embarrass them in front of other people. So the Lord will caution you and give you guidance on that. I just want to say that. But again, it is a responsibility. It isn't to be taken lightly. And the spirit world can be really, really, really fun in the Lord. But again, it is a very real place. And because most of us haven't really encountered it, when we talk about it, it just is sort of like this fictional space that stuff happens in. And in Christianity, we generally go, second heaven bad, like third heaven good. And our understanding doesn't necessarily really go beyond that, but you're going to encounter the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's again why it's important to guard your gates, guard your eye gates and your ear gates. Like, what are you listening to? What are you seeing all of the time? Because it really does end up being a garbage in, garbage out scenario of what you're going to see. So if you've defiled your eyes and your ears by what you're seeing and what you're taking in, that stuff gets measured back unto you. To the degree that you are focusing on it, it's going to come back to you. So just remember that as you're seeking and wanting to grow in these things, because everyone, whether you see a little or a lot, you can grow in it. So I want to remind you from 2 Corinthians 4:17 and 18, and this is kind of a little bit of the foundation of this for the seeing in the Spirit. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that for far outweighs, them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary and what is unseen is eternal. So think about that. Think about where you're fixing your eyes. Where are you setting your mind? The word says you set your mind on things above and not things beneath. So for our eyes, what are we doing? We're fixing our eyes on Jesus. He is the eternal realm, So we're fixing our eyes on that which is unseen. And we also want to think of 2 Corinthians 5:7. We walk by faith and not by sight. Believing is seeing. And we can't forget about Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. You're going to want to write that down because those verses connect together for this so that you have the right frame of mind as you're going into this. And so if we're taking a look at the different ways in which people see in the Spirit, and I want to kind of run through some of the most normal examples, I guess you could say, of seeing in the Spirit and kind of how that functions. And everyone is different, so everyone sees a little different. And I'm going to just use different language for this. This way, if you're brand new to this, then you're going to still understand what in the world I'm talking about. And if you got some church in you, you're still going to understand what I'm talking about. So the first way that a lot of folks will see in the Spirit is what is called open vision. So just in general, in terms of seeing in the spirit realm, what this would mean is that the realm that is around you, everything that you see, would roll or kind of peel back. It's almost like it disappears from in front of your face, and you see a whole other realm. You see an entirely different world, more or less. So this exterior falls away, and it's out here that you're seeing this open vision. That's how you're seeing, which is similar to having an open vision from the Lord, but that's a slightly different topic. So you're seeing out here, you are seeing an entirely different scene, like from a movie, as if this world has rolled away. The next is a closed vision, or you have closed vision, which another way of saying this is it happens in your mind's eye, or another way of saying it would be in the theater of your mind. Your imagination is a function of your spirit. We are 3-part beings: spirit, soul, and body. So your imagination is what is functioning with your spirit. It's kind of like its organ for existence. And so that theater of your mind, that screen of your mind's eye, is what needs to be sanctified. Because what you will have otherwise is simply a lot of imaginative situations and visions and things that people see that aren't necessarily so. So you ask the Lord to purify your imagination. And again, watch your intake. What are you watching? What are you taking in? Are you seeing if you're watching pornography? Oh my. please go deal with that. Please go deal with that. Horror movies, that kind of thing. If that's all you're taking in, that's more than likely what you're going to see. And that's just a wide open avenue for the enemy to attack you anyway. So you should deal with that. Definitely deal with that in terms of your imagination. It's very important that your imagination be sanctified. And we're going to move on to the next one, which is seeing in a way that looks like other beings are a hologram, or another way to say it is superimposed over this realm. So if any of you have been to an amusement park where they have holograms as part of the entertainment, then you have an idea of what this is like. You're seeing something, it's obviously very real, but it may seem more ethereal or kind of see-through-ish or hologram-esque. And it's like it's there, but it's superimposed over our realm. And that is another way in which folks would see in the spirit. And also dreams. And this one kind of gets left out a lot, but a lot of times folks are trained on seeing in the spirit in their dream life, because that is God. He's giving you things in it to your spirit to see then. And then during the daytime, as you continue to grow in him, then you might see other things during the course of the day, because it sounds all wonderful to be able to see the spirit world. But then when you realize what's like all this activity that's going on, you still have to function in your everyday life and love people and talk to people and preach and everything else that you're doing, realizing that there's a whole lot of activity around you all of the time. So it's in God's mercy, he does that. And then I also want to mention folks who are mature. Now, sometimes they come out of the womb being able to see like this. It depends on different factors in your history and your lineage and everything. But there are folks that operate in a very high level of discerning of spirits. And discerning of spirits there's a Greek word, I think it's diakrino, meaning to distinguish between. So you're looking at what is the source, who is the spirit that is either speaking to you or through a person, and that helps you to determine, okay, is this the Lord? Is this angelic? Is this the fallen stuff? Like, is this the demon? What in the world is this? But the folks that will operate in a very high level of discerning of spirits will oftentimes just see the spirit world like you and I just sitting there with them. They'll see everything. And so that's another way in which that can work. And regardless of where you are in that, the Lord trains you. And oh my goodness, it's a function of prophecy. Seeing in the spirit is a function of a lot. But there's almost like what you could say, kind of like the slower lane on the highway and then the faster lane on the highway. Again, because there is a correlation between what is seen and the responsibility and your obedience to it. So the fast lane, you could say, are those who see into that spirit world, that they know they have to handle business as soon as something arises in that lane. So some of the imagination is slower of a lane because the ramifications of what you see may be a little bit different in that kind of a context, whereas the fast lane, there might be more of the interchange between the angels of the Lord and then also dealing with principalities or powers who might have claim to a situation or something like that. So it really is there is that difference that is there, like fast lane, slow lane, only because there is an expediency and an urgency sometimes of things that need to be done. And there's quite the responsibility level that goes along with that. So all of this is tied to responsibility and obedience. And so I thank God that in his mercy, even when I am seeing some of these nasties in the spirit, sometimes the Lord changes the way that they appear so that I can actually walk out of a place without, messing my pants because Some of these things are really stinking scary looking. Okay, we'll just call it for what it is. But I wanted to share with you some of the examples of spiritual sight in the Bible. And there are so many. This is just a few of them. And I want you to go and kind of check that out and research that, because again, as you're reading these accounts, you're reading history, and you are able to start to see, and that would be something you can do, is to go and read through these, meditate on it, and actually you can start to see this in your imagination, and this helps in the overall process of seeing. But the first one I want to talk about is Exodus. It's from Exodus 3, and it's Moses in the burning bush. So Moses is walking and he sees a bush that is on fire and it's not being consumed. So he says, I am going to turn and go take a look at whatever this thing is that's happening, because the angel of the Lord was standing in a flame in the midst of this bush. And again, it wasn't burnt in the natural. So he's watching this. And we all know that was a very holy moment for Moses, where the Lord calls him to what he's going to do. And also Numbers 22, this is Balaam and the donkey. So what happens is that Balaam has gone on an assignment that the Lord was big mad that he was going. And he went anyway. And he's riding his donkey, and an angel of the Lord gets in the way, the path of the donkey 3 different times. And the donkey is trying to get out of the way of this angel because the donkey doesn't want to die. And Balaam is beating his donkey. And so the 3rd time this happens, his donkey she's just like, I'm done. And she lays down, right? Or are they dudes? I forget. Donkey is a dude. It's probably a chick. Anyway, so the donkey lays down. And Balaam is still beating the thing. And then the donkey, because the Lord opened up the donkey's mouth, says, like, why are you beating me? Have I done this to you before? Like, kind of, is this my normal behavior that I would try to not obey your commands and all of that? And Balaam is so mad. He's like, I should just draw a sword and kill you. And then the angel of the Lord ends up talking to Balaam, and Balaam's spiritual eyes get open. The Lord opens his eyes. Now he sees why his donkey was avoiding. He sees that, oh my gosh, this is what the angel of the Lord has been doing this whole time. And so now he's got the angel of the Lord also kind of giving him what for. And he basically tells him, like, hey, I would have killed you and spared the donkey. So we have to pay attention to what is going on in the spirit around us so that we don't find ourselves in that kind of a situation. And then, of course, you have 2 Kings 6 with Elisha and his servant. And this is a fabulous account from 2 Kings 6, because the king of Aram is kind of mad because no matter what he tries to do to come after Israel, it's not very successful, because you've got this prophet who his men tell him, like, none of us are traitors to you. Like, we're not warning anybody. It's this guy. It's the man of God. He overhears what you say in your bedchambers, because God puts prophets in the most unusual places, and they overhear plots of the enemy, and then they set out and they make sure they don't happen. Yay, it's good. So anyway, the whole situation gets set up where the king of Aram is like, okay, well, we're coming after them. And when the servant wakes up that morning and he goes outside, he sees that they are surrounded by an army. So he runs back in to tell Elisha, and Elisha's like, don't worry about it. And he tells the Lord, he's like, Lord, open his eyes so that he may see. And then he looks around and he says, there are more with us than are with them. And when the servant's eyes were opened, he saw all the chariots of fire, and he saw the huge army that was there with Elisha. So it's amazing. And you have Acts 9, Paul on the road to Damascus, when he's persecuting, he's breathing out murderous threats to go kill the people of the way, to go haul them all in, because that's what Christians were first called. They were followers of the way, Jesus Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, the life. The word Christian and the idea of we're little anointed ones was more of a mockery of Christians than it was like a nice, blessed little, oh, we're little mini Jesuses running around. It was more of a mockery. We're followers of the way. That's what we really are. And so he's fixing to go out and go drag them all in. And that's when the Lord encounters him on the road to Damascus. And then Paul even says, "Who are you, Lord?" And he's like, "Well, I'm Jesus, and you're persecuting me." And then he ends up where he's blinded. So he sees the spiritual light. He sees the light of God, and that hits him. But then he's blinded, and he has to go and actually get prayer from Ananias. And he says things like scales fell off of his eyes. So you have that, and then Luke 24, which is absolutely incredible because this is after Jesus has been crucified. And some of the disciples, they've left the tomb and all of that, and they're in wonder and like, where in the world is he? And they encountered angels who were like, well, he has ascended. They're walking to the village of Emmaus, and they are perplexed by everything that has happened. And this man comes up and joins them on the journey, but his actual identity was actually kept from them. So they're walking along and they're talking, and this man's kind of like, what are you guys talking about? And they're like, are you the only one in Jerusalem that doesn't know what just happened? And they're explaining what had happened with Jesus. And then the man starts to unveil everything from the law, the prophets, all of the words about what the Messiah would do. And they're just like, oh my gosh, like having that revelation, and their minds are basically opening and being expanded on the way to Emmaus. And then when they get there, this guy he made as if he was going to keep on going. And they're like, no, don't leave. Like, come to where we're staying. So he agrees, and they go to have dinner. And it's at the moment when this man breaks the bread. He gives thanks and he breaks the bread, that their eyes are open and they realize it's Jesus. He's been the one the whole time on the road talking to us. And now here he is. And when he does that, what happens? He disappears. So he has this appearance, and they're like, oh my gosh, were our hearts not burning inside of us? Everything that he said. And then they all get up and they go to Jerusalem to go tell everybody else. And as they're doing that, that's when Jesus appears to all of them. Like, just the most amazing encounter. And we kind of skip over it because we get this little tiny bit of the story usually in most church services, but not the whole thing. So go check that out. That's in Luke 24. And from my own life, I just want to share a couple other experiences that will hopefully make some sense for you in different ways in which this function is purposed, because again, it has a purpose. And even if it's God showing love for you in the moment, that is still a purpose, and that is still a righteous purpose because you're a child of God. But the one that I can remember was a deliverance. And there was a team of us praying for an individual. And as we all kind of sat there, just gathering our thoughts, listening to the Lord, taking some notes before we start in with everything, it was simultaneously, I heard and I saw Mexico. So in the theater of my mind, I see a map. It just goes poof really fast. And I see a map of Mexico. And at the same time, I hear, in spiritual hearing, Mexico. And so before we got started into the rest of the deliverance, I knew from how the Lord communicates to me that whatever had occurred in Mexico would be key to the rest of the deliverance, because there was something that needed to be dealt with. And so when we discussed that with the individual before we got going, there was an actual traumatic experience that had happened in Mexico. So we dealt with that first before moving on to the rest of the deliverance. So it just makes things a little easier as you go if you kind of have a key to open things up. And another experience, it took place as a word of knowledge that the Lord gave me as I was talking with a man. And he's talking with me, and as he's just kind of sharing things about what he's up to, all of a sudden I see the Liberty Bell with its famous crack in it, but I saw it kind of in the negative. So it was glowing, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird. And I continued talking with him, and I said, while you were talking, I was asking the Lord what in the world this meant, because I saw something that was unusual, and I saw the Liberty Bell, but it was like in a negative, like a negative of the Liberty Bell. And his eyes brightened, but he teared up, and he said, I was given an x-ray of the Liberty Bell as a gift from a doctor of one of the hospitals there. They were there installing like an MRI kind of suite. And so he said, that's when I worked there, and I was helping to install, and it was one of the radiologists had given something to me, but he had given him an x-ray from the Liberty Bell, and that actually linked into his heart in a really major way, because back in those days, his marriage with his wife was very good, and he loved her very much, and then he struggled with substance addiction or alcohol addiction, and it ended up leading them to a divorce. And so he really wanted her back. He had been clean for years and wanted her back. So we prayed together that the Lord might bring them back together. But it was a specific word of knowledge that there could be encouragement given to this man, and also agreement and prayer. And another opportunity that I had was an interesting visitation by a being. And I believe this to be an angel of the Lord when it happened. And this was a case where it almost looked like a hologram. It was late at night. I was sitting up in my bed at the moment, and then this being came through the doorway physically. It was about the size of a human. It wasn't some giant thing. It was about the size of a human. And when it came through, it was so radiant and so bright. It was bright, whitish, bluish color, and I screamed at the top of my lungs. It was the scariest thing, and what I felt from it, like the power that was coming off of it, was quite frightening, and I'm screaming, and then all of a sudden, it was like it disappeared, and I caught my breath, and then the next thing you know, it was like, poof! At the end of my bed in all of its glory and splendor and the brightness and everything else. And I did again. I screamed so loud, probably woke all my neighbors up, but I was screaming because it was so intense and so otherworldly. That's the thing. I was full of the fear of God in that moment, and it was so intense. And I kind of wanted to share with you an example so that you kind of have an idea of what this was similar to, what it looked like. And there's a photo, and I am trying to authenticate the source of it because I have a remembrance of where it came from, but I cannot be 100% on that because it's been a little bit of time, but I'm going to give you what I believe to be true about this photo and show this to you so that you can have a sense of it. And it is clearly an older photo. It is well over 20 years old at this point, I would think. And I believe that it was from a service that Mickey Robinson, if you haven't heard Mickey's testimony, you should go and look that up. But it was a service that was going on at a conference that I think they were having in South America. Again, I cannot recall the details. But in this photograph, you can clearly see at the front of the sanctuary the beautiful, brilliant light of the beings that are there in worship with the rest of the people and worship with the saints of God right there. And when you see, and hopefully you're able to see this, and I know this photo is old and that it just becomes overly pixelated if you try to zoom in. But the first time I saw that photograph, it took my breath away because your spirit knows when you're seeing something that is true and when you're seeing something that is not. And there are a lot of scams these days, and we're talking deep fakes and all the other stuff that's going on. But when you see this photo, you know that this is something that is otherworldly for sure. So please let me know what you think about it. But the being that I saw in my bedroom that night looks pretty similar to one of these guys. So I just wanted to share that with you. Let me know in the comments what you think. It could be some of the great cloud of witnesses that came. It could be angels of the Lord. Angels of the Lord are not always 100 feet tall, like what tends to get talked about in a lot of the testimonies and stories. A lot of them are ministering spirits, and they're there to minister to you. And a lot of them are people size. They're not all these huge, massive guys. And then lastly, this one was a time I saw in the spirit where it connects back to that cassette tape that I burned that I talked about at the beginning of the video. And when I burned that tape was around the same timing that my eyes were opened and I saw the two spirit guides that the psychic had assigned to me. And I remember when I first sat with her, she talked about these two beings that were with me. And again, I didn't know anything about anything at the time. And I did not have the relationship with the Lord that was real. I just thought anything having to do with him. Again, I didn't have the Spirit of God. I didn't have the capacity. So I thought it was all junk. I thought it was whatever. And she assigned these two spirit guides to me. And she gave me their names and said, yeah, when you need help, call on these guys. So what do you think I was doing in all of my ignorance and all of my rebellion towards the Lord? So after I got born again, they came to say hi. And they weren't the beautiful things that I was told by any stretch of the imagination. So anyway, I had the good pleasure and privilege of kicking their heinies out of my life, out of my house, and out of my realms. I saw them come down the hallway, and I caught them in my mirror. I was doing my hair at the time, and I saw them in my mirror go by, and they went to my bedroom. And I thought, oh no. And I walked out, and my cat was sitting on the floor, and she looked horrified at what she was seeing too. And so I took my authority and I cast them out and I renounced all of that junk because that is exactly what it is. All right, there we go. That is off my chest. So again, if you see a little or you see a lot, you can develop this with the Lord. That's the key. And remember, Matthew 6:22, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. And for inspiration, my goodness, read the book of Daniel, because Daniel exemplifies the key aspect, I think, to seeing in the spirit, which is when he saw something, he would say, yes, Lord, I see this. And then you would usually see like a paragraph or so down. And I kept looking and I saw this. And I kept looking and I saw that, because a lot of this is to keep looking. And I'll give you the example the Lord gave me one day when I was praying and asking about this seeing in the spirit business. And he said, go to the window. And so I said, okay. So I go to the window and I noticed that my eyes were already focusing on the screen. And he was like, good job. Like, you didn't mess this up. Good. And he said, okay, look at the screen. What do you see? I'm like, I see the screen. He said, good. Now look through the screen. What do you see? And that's when it clicked for me, because this realm around us is the screen. So where is our focus? Most of the time, our focus is on the screen. It's not on the eternal realm. Look through the screen. When you look through the screen, you can see everything that is outside, right? If you're standing in the house and you're looking to the exterior, it's only looking through the screen that you can see. So remember that when it comes to seeing in the spirit. And I want to also remind you again, 2 Corinthians 4:18, we look to the unseen because those things are eternal. Remember that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, because believing is seeing. And I want to recommend to you that if you haven't caught up on the other spiritual senses series, to go check those out. There's see through scent, taste and see, ears to hear, touch, and then this one. So definitely check those out. And I want to leave you with a little piece from Job. because he had a lot of discourse with God, and God finished kind of schooling him after he was like, well, who did this and who did that? And can you get Leviathan? Can you drag him in? And all of that. And Job has this moment where he really realizes the reality of his existence. And he says, my ears had heard of you, but my eyes have seen you. This led Job to repent. It led him to repent. And so seeing in the Spirit will often cause that repentance, because you'll see what the Lord is trying to do, what he wants to do. You'll see how the enemy is trying to come against those things. And so it's a gifted opportunity from the Lord to really change your mind and change your life and to go in the way that he has for you. So again, seeing in the Spirit is a beautiful thing. It is a responsibility. It is not for fun and parlor tricks and that kind of stuff, though some people treat it that way. It's very serious. And it can be some serious fun, but it does have a purpose. So thank you so much for watching. Share any of your experiences in the comments below so that everybody can learn together, and I can learn from you guys too, because I appreciate that so much, to be able to see the Lord through the eyes of others and to see him in ways that I haven't seen him or experienced him before, because that is to be treasured and that is a blessing. So thank you so much for watching. And although there's 5 technical senses, there's more to come, and it's going to be fun. So thanks for watching. Take care.